on this show. It's part 2 of the best picks in best ball for 2026. Pat Kerrane from Legendary Upside and myself, Erik Beimfohr from Spike Week. We get into our running backs and some flexes and wild cards on part 1, which you could go check out on both the Legendary Upside and Spike Week YouTube channels. We discussed our favorite quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends, one for Pat and one for myself. And today we're going to each pick a running back, a flex, which is, as it might sound, any running back, wide receiver, or tight end neither of us were able to get to with our top pick, another sort of just flex-worthy nominee for best picks in 2026. And then a wild card, which is maybe a player, maybe a cohort of a player or a type of player that could totally break 2026 best ball. That may not be the, best pick, the best ADP value, but it might be the thing that totally decides best ball tournaments in 2026. Both of those from Pat and myself, and a whole bunch more conversation over a couple of hours, as we tend to do. And yes, we did actually talk about some running backs, but let's go ahead and get to the show. All right, Pat, we are back for part 2 of our best picks in fantasy, little mini series, as we tend to do. We got through 3 of 6 picks in our first show. This was not supposed to be a 2-part series, but as tends to happen, we got off on some fun, what I thought were really fun, like side conversations amidst all of this, right? Somehow you don't see Dejan Stribling on this list, but he became a fun talking point among
we won't get off topic this week, though.
Well, that's because we're talking about running backs, of course, this week. For anybody watching on YouTube,
way off topic then.
We have not. Yeah, actually, we're going to get more off topic probably if we have to discuss running backs. But we did quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end last week. And go back and listen to that episode, both on Pat's Legendary Upside channel and on the Spike Week channel. And today we're going to get into, of course, running backs, our favorite running back picks in fantasy this year. And then we opened the doors for 2 more picks, so that we have 6 total picks apiece with a flex, right? So non-quarterbacks, any other player that we did not get to mention, both Pat and myself, and then a wild card, which is, as you might imagine, a wild card. It could be absolutely anything. It could be a certain player. It could be a roster construction. It could be a stack. It could be a team. It could be whatever. So both of us will give our picks there. Before we dive in, Pat, was there anything that you wanted to touch on before we dive in that stemmed from last week, or are you ready to roll?
No, I think we can roll right into it.
All right. Can I say, I want to say one quick thing. There was a really, I thought, good comment that spurred something in me that was really fascinating, where someone said something in YouTube comments about, like, I'm so glad that so-and-so is pushing back on something, like, you give me a better price. And like, this person didn't mean this, like what I'm about to say about it. I think that's totally fine. Like, I have guys where I'm like, please God, let them fall. Like, I did a whole tangent this morning on a show on Malik Neighbors. Like, please give me like mid-3rd round Malik Neighbors, like sign me up for that. Right. So I get that perspective, but also I feel like the point of these shows, and like, you do podcasts with other people, so do I, all that is like, I think the best value you can gain is the sort of back and forth, right? Like, if we just all got on here and you said Pat Mahomes, I'm like, yep, smash, on to the next, right? Justin Herbert, yep, smash, on to the next, right? Like, if we all just say, Ryan Flanoy and Dejan Stribling and Harold Fannin, and we don't sort of, I think if you're just talking to yourself or whatever, if you're not having that, like, let's talk about the cons. Let's talk about, like, let's build, even if you really love this player, let's build the bear case for them. Let's talk about all the risks and the issues. And then let's see, like, okay, how much do you still really love this player? And I find I learned way more from that part of it than just like, Pat, tell me why you love Kai Lemon.
Yeah, this is something like on Ship Chasing over the years, like Gretsch would sometimes dive into the prospect stuff, like on the later end, or like, he doesn't do quite as much best ball. So he's like kind of coming up, like we're like, we have like hardened takes in February.
You've drafted 350 teams,
like round 4 values. Yeah. And so like Gretsch would kind of come up and be like, because he's doing his own work into it. And then he's like, wait, so you guys like this guy? That seems like a terrible pick to me. Or like, why aren't you guys slamming this guy? And so, yeah, that type of stuff is super valuable because it can be kind of like you're not always interrogating some of these things that
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, I guess that's fine, and then someone else comes along with new independent thought put into it. It can help you reconsider the opinion and kind of make sure you kind of steel man these things.
Yep. 100%. I think I made you go first last week, so I'm gonna go first, and I'm gonna start at running back. I had to make sure I had a running back pick ready to go, otherwise we would have been here forever because I don't like any of it. I literally just you'll appreciate this. So I've been drafting a little bit more on DraftKings and drafters so far. Just like they have like a million promos and all that. Like every day there's like a new best ball promo on DraftKings. It's pretty sweet. But then Underdog just launched a BBM promo that between now and Sunday, if you draft 5, you get a free one. So I hopped into a BBM right before this, and I went just full old school, straight 0 running back. But I didn't take a running back until I was just like, let's see how this goes. I didn't take a running back until the 10th round, I think, but I took 8 of them. I took 8 of them bitches. Took eight running backs on this team. But it was like it was sort of like what we were talking about. Like I'm like I haven't even done this. Like I haven't even drafted this like 0 running back team, or I have this sort of extreme thing, because there's this pocket of running backs that's not at the very tippy top, but in this middle tier that I think is personally led by Cam Skattebo. In the 40s or so, right? Give or take your site, it varies a little bit, and every draft is a little bit different depending upon how they like Cam Skattebo. But I just feel like, look, the best way to sell something is always to start with the negatives, which is what I always love to do.
That's what they say.
But people are the first thing people will always say if you mention a giant is, well, Matt Nagy, Matt, and I'm like, yes, I trust me, I understand, I get it. That's like the only red flag, given the health updates we've gotten on Cam Skattebo. Like he's out there already. Like you could not get more glowing health updates, right? The reason why people are concerned about Malik Neighbors because we're not getting, it's a little sketchy. He got a cleanup, and like we don't know if he's going to be ready for week 1. So I totally understand people's concerns with that. But with Skattebo, it's like they're like, yeah, he's fine, dude. Like it's all good. He's going to be out there practicing with the team right away. We have no concerns. All he did last year as a rookie, like sort of pre-Jackson Dart kind of emerging as a guy who I think also specifically really helps Cam Skattebo with his rushing threat out of the backfield, is
also throw to him too. He's kind of a nice mix where
it's perfect.
Yeah.
Normally you only get one or the other, right? Like you get the check down guys like Rodgers or Kirk Cousins who don't run, or you get the runners who never throw it to the running backs. Dart does a little bit of both. That came from some of the Ole Miss stuff, I think. But also they're buddies. They are. You want to talk about buddies? Maybe to a little too. They've taken it
might
a
be
little
bad,
too
actually.
far. Yeah,
yeah. You're still on the bear case, right? Because
exactly.
Bad.
We haven't got to the bull case. He played 11% of snaps in week 1. Right, he got 2 carries for -3 yards, hilariously, and 2 targets in his first NFL game. From that point forward, he played at least 50% of snaps in every game until he, broke his leg against the Eagles
in a very fluky way. Like for a guy that we kind of all were worried would get hurt in like the flukiest way.
Yeah, I thought he was like going to break his neck or something, get a concussion or something like that. No, it was just a total fluke. Breaks his leg, could happen to absolutely anyone. I actually think it's more fluky for him, given he's this little bowling ball, that someone lands on in that way. It's probably even flukier for him. So breaks his leg over that stretch, including week 1 when he played 11% of snaps behind Tyrone Tracy. He was the RB. Oh shit, I had it. So hold on. The RB9 points per game in PPR, basically tied with Derrick Henry. He was Derrick Henry. He was Chase Brown. He was ahead of Josh Jacobs, ahead of Kyron Williams, ahead of Javonte Williams. I had Amarian Hampton. I had a Travis Etienne. I had a Saquon Barkley and Ashton Genty. I understand he's not super sexy. I understand that's a small sample, but I think it's indicative of the role that he brings to the game of fantasy. You want to talk about a high value touch god? He is a high value touch god. He catches the ball out of the backfield. He gets the goal line carries because he's small and 250 pounds or whatever. The coaches trust him. The coaches love him. right? The way that he plays. Does he have elevated injury risk? Sure. Welcome to playing running back in the NFL in 2026. I feel like we're getting this massive discount on a guy that, like, someone explained to me why Josh Jacobs is that much better. Someone explained to me why Travis Etienne is that much better. Like, other than the injury, and like I said, Matt Nagy, I don't understand why he's worse really than a lot of the guys we've priced up, except for he snapped his leg. But that's like sort of being double counted because they already told us that he's healthy. So he's been a guy that, like, I can't get to my 0 RB teams, or I can't get to anything because he's just staring me in the face in the 4th round. And like, I may have 3 wide receivers already, or 2 wide receivers and a running back, or Bowers or whatever. And I just feel so cozy clicking him where he goes.
Yeah, I mean, compared to like Josh Jacobs or even like a Chase Brown, like he's not really that different. The difference is he those guys, or, because those, or, is he someone they don't trust as much? But that, when you look at like what's probably going to happen, he does look a lot like that type of player, or kind of maybe a Kyron Williams from a few years ago, before Quorum started to eat into it a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, I like Skattebo a lot where he goes. He could move up. Like, if he were to come into the middle of the 4th and like flip Bucky Irving, I don't think I'd have any issue. I think I would draft some of them there. If he were kind of in the Javonte range, I don't think I'd have a problem with that. I mean, it would probably need to be accompanied with, continued bullishness around his health and, what we expect him to do early in the season and kind of hit the ground running as their new workhorse. But like, if we were to get that kind of confidence around that, just, then yeah, like why not take him in the kind of like 3-4 turn range, maybe even the late 3rd. He was in the 5th round. He's in the middle of the 5th. I've started taking him in the late 4th. Like I said, mid 4th. I wouldn't even need it would just need the price to be different, and I would be taking him probably in the mid 4th. So yeah, I think he's a really strong pick. You do have, I think, some reasons to want a discount relative to someone like Jacobs, who, I do think is like super locked in. He's older. Yep. But we've seen Jacobs do his thing for a number of years.
You don't think Marshawn Lloyd's gonna find it's
they don't think that.
Yeah. Every year's the Marshawn Lloyd hype is like they're hyping him up. This year they're like, I don't know, maybe he can stay healthy. Is like the hype around Marshawn Lloyd now.
Yeah. And you get Breece Hall in the middle of 3rd. I think he's super talented. You have concerns about the offense, certainly. Travis Etienne is pretty interesting in the middle of the 3rd or late 3rd. So it's not like Skattebo is outrageously underpriced, but yeah, I mean, there's been a clear tier break by the time you get to Skattebo. He's kind of leading off a new tier, and I think he does lead that tier. But they would have replaced him if Jeremiah Love was there. They would have taken Jeremiah Love.
Very true.
So like, what is the commitment to this guy? And it's not at the level of a Josh Jacobs or what. I mean, and Jacobs might like fall off this year. He's an older back. So that organizational commitment doesn't like fully protect you, but it's nice to have. It's certainly, you're not protected if you don't have it. And I'm not really sure he has it. It's a new staff. Dayball, Greg Rosenthal last summer described Skattebo as just Dayball, but younger and plays running back. And I was like, oh, so he's going to absolutely smash, huh? Like this. And then like, he's always a 4th round pick. Like, how much is going to get? Like, he's going to take this job. He's going to take the job. Like, it became kind of very clear.
He did it in week 2.
Yeah. It became quite clear in the, kind of the training camp period that this was going to be Skattebo. And I thought Skattebo was a really good prospect. Certainly a lot better than Tyrone Tracy. And, basically Skattebo is one of these guys who like looks exactly like I thought he would. He catches passes, which was always an underrated part of his profile. People didn't really give him credit for that. They treated him like the comps that people would throw out would be these bruising running backs that didn't catch passes. And he is that, but he also catches passes. So you get he's like a high value. He's built for high value touches, for the short yardage stuff and the receptions, and that gives you some margin for error in terms of what the total workload looks like, in terms of how powerful the offense is, because I think he'll have the high value stuff pretty much locked down, even if there's not a ton of goal line carries to go around. But yeah, I mean, the Matt Nagy thing's not ideal. You do have concerns with darts health as well.
Yep.
You know, this dude cannot protect himself. You have some uncertainty around Dart's skill level. He really flashed last year, but he was kind of a surprise, or like at least a late, guy to move up into the first round. Like early in the process, he was seen as more of like probably a second rounder or something. So then he, it was going to be Shedeur Sanders going 102, and at that time, Dart wasn't a first round pick. So, so yeah, it's like the quarterback situation is not certain. I tend to be pretty optimistic on Dart. I think he's good, but you'd have to think, like, if things go wrong, like, how do things go wrong? Well, one of them's just Dart didn't take a step forward, and you have this kind of inconsistent and kind of just dude who plays like with reckless abandon in a way that's actually not great.
Usually that is viewed positively, right? Oh, he's playing with reckless abandon. This guy is a gamer and all that
can
kind
get
of stuff.
old.
And he sort of is that. That's true. It's true, but there's a line where you still have to play with some level of intelligence, right? The NBA playoffs are going on. I apologize to the football folks for giving this some basketball analogies too often, but there's like these awesome defenders.
At least it's not hockey, dude.
Yeah. My wife is watching some new hockey show, literally right now while she's working, and I came down, and she was, I guess it's one of these like smutty shows or whatever, and she's like, and she reads those books and stuff like that, and she was like embarrassed to tell me. I'm like, what are you watching? Like, as I'm getting ready, and she's like, it's like when a dog, like their ears go down and stuff like that. She was like, this new hockey show, and I look over and there's these shirtless dudes working out and they're fucking jacked, you know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, okay, I got it. I see why you didn't want to say that. But so anyway, there's also good basketball shows probably in the same vein. But anyway, so like there's these awesome defenders, right, that are like super important to their team. They guard the other team's best player or whatever, but they're partially so good on defense because balls to the wall, 100%, right? Full effort on defense at all times. But then you give up some bad fouls every once in a while doing that, right? And the next thing you know, you're in foul trouble. And like, because you couldn't turn it off and play until like there's that line. And I don't think Dart has figured out that line. And like, he's young and he's boneheaded, and frankly, Skattebo hasn't figured out that line. I don't think either.
Haven't. Which is why we were saying it's maybe not great that they're best friends.
Exactly. They are the Bash Bros from Mighty Ducks. Okay, like they're insane. But I think one thing, Jameis is the backup in New York, which is
not bad, yeah.
Which is like in the scheme of backups is pretty good, relatively
for
speaking.
Sure.
It could be a lot. I mean, the Steelers might have a worse starting quarterback if Rodgers doesn't come back than Jameis. So that's at least a fail-safe, break glass in case of emergency type situation. And then, like you said, I think just the high value touch, ability and opportunity at a discount from the other backs who were we're betting on the volume, but we're also really betting on the high value. Like Josh Jacobs is going to get the high value touches. Travis Etienne is almost assuredly going to get the high value, right? It's like we can project them for more certainty on these roles, but like you said, most of the time, I think Skattebo gets very similar in just as good of an offense, at least a high ceiling offense, despite the Nagy effect, because there's a lot of pieces here. If Neighbors is healthy, if Dart really is solid, Isaiah Likely is a good football player, there's a lot of potential, I think, in the Giants. And so soaking up those high value touches in this offense in the 4th or 5th round, like you said, is super valuable to me.
Yeah, and I do think, like, with drafting early, ideally we're getting guys, ideally we're just drafting really good teams. But, it is possible that we're going to get combos of players that just weren't available later. So, and I mean that less from like a uniqueness perspective and more like, isn't it nice when you get 2 second-round picks instead of one, and so you have the ability to put together teams that, while you had less information than drafters in August, you also, were reading the information better than 11 other people in May. And you get, now, like, are we going to have guys who rocket up in the same way that we have had in the past from the final rounds? I'm a little skeptical of that because the rookie running back class isn't very good. And I mean, those guys are great candidates for that kind of rise. There's fewer of those guys. Really, I'm not sure there's any of those guys who, until you get into the day 3 picks. So it's always going to be a little suspect. We're going to be always kind of making a leap of faith with these rookie running backs.
Yep.
But it's players kind of like Skattebo. I mean, he'd be one of the earlier guys, one of the more expensive guys. But I think it's players like Skattebo who it's like, yeah, you used to be able to get Skattebo in the 5th. I forgot about that. Goes at the 308 now. Right. And it's like, man, dude, this team's really fun because, yeah, you went like, you have 3 running backs in the first 5 rounds, but it's like Gibbs, Skattebo, and Jeremiah Love. That's like really fun. And then like, hopefully there's receivers available now, that in those types of ranges that allow that build to be a super build, which I think is possible. Like I like Mekhi Lemon I love him in the early 7th. He was my pick for the best guy there, but you can get him in the late 6th. He pairs really nicely with a Skattebo, team as your wide receiver 3, maybe even wide receiver 4 if you get him in the 7th. So yeah, it's one of those picks that might not be available later. Which isn't, I'm not like CLV, I think is kind of nice rather than something I'm like really, geared to find. It's like, let's find the guys who score points. But, certainly if I think a guy's a really good pick at value and I think the guy might move up from here, then, someone that prioritize a little extra.
Right. You can't I say this all the time. Trust me, I've tried to go to the bank and be like, please, sir, will you take this CLV at the end of the season and put this in my account?
They don't accept it.
My dogs are hungry, okay, because, so-and-so, Trey Lance snapped his ankle, and then J.K. Dobbins tore his ACL, and, Malik Neighbors tore his ACL. The CLV is wonderful, but you can't do anything with it. But it is, the reason why, you broke down the reason why it can be helpful. It in and of itself is not, right? Like sometimes Julio Jones is going in the last round and then he signs and he skyrockets up to fucking pick 120 and like still doesn't.
Then it's helpful that because there's teams that are drafting Julio Jones at 120.
Yeah, exactly. It's not helpful because you got Julio Jones at pick 200. It's helpful because now you're getting better players that aren't Julio Jones. But like you said, when you get sort of these combinations of players that are only accessible at certain periods of time, like
I'm glad I was drafting then.
Yeah, I'm really happy I took him then because now it's not that I'm not going to draft him now. It's that I have 5 teams or whatever, right? This is all it really is. I have 5 teams from earlier on that I look back and I'm like, that team's fucking awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Like that team, like I'll never be able to get that team again. And I'm glad I drafted it. Doesn't mean you're going to win anything. It just means you got your money in good on a small amount of teams, which is you're trying to stack those wins, right? There's no one foolproof thing. Stack those little wins, and that's one of them. Hey guys, really quick break just to tell you about something that you may or may not be aware of. If you are a Legendary Upside subscriber, you have access to a special 40% discount on Spike Week Premium. So if you use code LEGUP, you're a Legendary Upside subscriber, use code LEGUP at checkout, you get 40% off of either a monthly or an annual subscription to Spike Week. You can take the power of Pat Kerrane's rankings and Discord and the Sidekick tool and bring it over and combine it with the Spike Week rankings and our Discord and the strategy content on both sites and advice, everything you hear both Pat and myself talk about on these shows. You can bring it all together and combine it into one with the tools, the Draft Hacker, Draft IQ, Draft Optimizer, everything we have over at Spike Week with the Sidekick and everything at Legendary Upside for a huge discount, 40% off Spike Week for Leg Up subscribers. Let's go ahead and get back to the show.
I'm going to go with a guy who's similar in some ways, but actually kind of different in some other ways, and say Bhayshul Tuten.
He's one of my finalists.
I don't expect Tuten to rise. I think Tuten might fall. But he's already to a point where I think he's a really good pick. He's not like free falling, but he's now in the 6th round officially. 61.1 is his ADP. And I bet that he does fall from here, at least a bit. So, from that, in that sense, it's not like you gotta get him now. But I think he's he's great. Like where he goes in the early 6th, I'm into it. In the late 5th, probably not to the point where I'm going to push him and see if I can get him in the 6th, but it's getting to that point where like, hey, what if I see if I can get him at 604 actually instead of taking him here and get a wide receiver, that I like. I've sometimes seen Devontae Adams fall that late in the 5th. I certainly would kind of stop the fall there on Adams and push Tuten and see if he comes back. But yeah, he's falling because of Chris Rodriguez hype and people being confusingly excited to me in terms of what they expect for Chris Rodriguez.
Haven't you seen his elusive rating, bro? This guy, nobody can tackle him.
He was efficient last year. I mean, to be fair to Chris Rodriguez, he was pretty efficient last year. He had
he's not bad.
He had 78 rush yards over expected, which is pretty solid. 46% success rate per NFL Next Gen. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to like paint him as like a guy who can't play, but he's kind of a journeyman. I guess it's unfair to call him journeyman, but he was journeying back and forth from the practice squad to the active roster in Washington. And they gotta like cut you to get you there. So he did sort of, he was on and off a roster a bunch. It was the same roster, but he could have been signed off the practice squad by anyone.
He's walking back and forth across a 2-lane highway or a 2-lane road.
Small journeys,
small town. He's in a small town.
Kind of a journeyman.
There's tumbleweed going across right now.
Yeah, so I don't know. That makes me like when I was in on Tuten ahead of the draft, and had a free agency. And when you like look at all the possible worlds that could have unfolded, getting Chris Rodriguez is the main competition is awesome. Chris Rodriguez is a 2-down guy. There was some talk that like he's not. Hey, you want to talk about Chris Rodriguez like he's a 2-down guy? This guy can do everything. Okay, I'm sure he can. He's been a clear 2-down guy, and he's pretty good in like short yardage and stuff, but he's also like a low volume, rotational runner. He's like a run specialist who doesn't play a lot. He has a career yards per route run.
Gus Edwards, right? It's like
he's Gus Edwards, 0.40 career yards per route run.
Jesus.
This includes the playoffs, I guess, although he didn't really play. So how many targets do you think he has in his entire career?
Oh, I've done this. It's so low. It's like 12.
I'll give you this. He's run 136 routes.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe 12 is low, but I'm just going to stick with it. 13 targets.
My headphone died.
That's how few targets it is. Your computer started failing.
Yeah. My computer tapped out of talking about Chris Rodriguez.
AI started taking your earbuds out because you were talking about Chris Rodriguez receiving. Like, dude, go do something else.
AI normally very supportive, normally quite encouraging on almost every idea. It's like, hey, I want to talk about Chris Rodriguez. No, that's a bad idea. Actually, peace.
Oh shoot.
7. He has 7 career targets.
7. I overshot it at 12.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Can I add?
He caught 6 of them.
I've heard a lot of also he caught 6. Look at that's efficiency, brother. A lot of Liam Cohen coached him at Kentucky, which is true. But to the receiving point, he had 20 total catches in 5 college years. He never caught more than 13 passes in a season in college, 5 in his final season. So to the like, okay, if you want to argue Liam Cohen coached him in college, sure, that's fine. But it's not like he was throwing him the ball in college either.
I also think like that explains why he's here. Yeah. And I would say like I take some Rachaad White. I also think like the whole, he's got the connection with Jaden Daniels from college. Like, okay, but like that's why he's there. It doesn't need. It's not like, hey, it's week 9. The chips are down. They gotta. It's like they gotta convert this 3rd and 1, this 4th and 1, right? Or they're gonna be like really behind the 8 ball for making the playoffs. And they're about to bring in Katron Allen, and Jaden's like, no, I want the guy I went to college with.
Hold up, let Rashad cook.
I don't know, man. Like, it doesn't go. There's only so much this stuff does. Like,
Yeah,
he's gonna get a chance because Liam Cohen's familiar with his game, but I don't think it's gonna make this like huge, long-lasting difference. So yeah. Anyway, that's Chris Rodriguez. Chris Rodriguez, I think, is capable enough to, and one of the things is there's gonna be work to go around. I don't think that Bhayshul Tuten is just gonna absolutely dominate touches in his first year as a starter. But I do think he will be the Jaguars' starting running back. And I guess I don't really care if like they fully anoint him as that to begin the season. I kind of hope they don't. Because if you tell me that Bhayshul Tuten keeps falling, like if he were to fall to 8th or 9th round, that would be like that would be so refreshing in some ways. Like what a different landscape we're in if we can get a guy with big time upside. If we have a chance to be like, this is the Chase Brown pick again. They're giving us the Chase Brown bet again. That would be awesome. Because I mean, Zach Moss can kind of play too. He was coming off a more impressive year than the year that Chris Rodriguez is coming off of when he was with Chase Brown. Like, it's more about, here's this young back who was a workhorse in college, who is super explosive in college, and then is just coming off a 47% success rate in his rookie season. Wasn't explosive as a rookie, but was very, very consistent as a rookie, which, is something where you look at like Travion Henderson and you're like, I really wish you were more consistent, or really RJ Harvey. Henderson was kind of fine. RJ Harvey was super inconsistent.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, it's probably going to cost some touches. They're probably going to be, mixing in Jonah Coleman and Dobbins. Dobbins isn't healthy. Coleman's going to get run probably because they just don't trust him enough as a pure runner. That consistency is really important to me, because it's really important to coaches. Like, I don't really care, if they were like, hey, we're going to give this guy 20 touches no matter what. I'd be like, oh, give me the most explosive guy then. But it helps secure volume, right? So
when I play Madden, I don't give a fuck if he gets tackled for a loss, right? I'm going to keep giving my good guy touches, but that's not how real football works. So we should care how real football works.
Yeah. Tuten only had 2 runs of 15 plus yards last year, which is a bit of a bummer, but I think he had a 4.39 40. Am I correct on that?
It was, yeah.
And he was very explosive.
4.32.
Yeah, sorry, Bhayshul. Short there. That's the only. That's the way I like to miss. I like to miss. The way that understates my point. Yeah. So you look at like he broke a bunch of tackles in college, but he had 47% breakaway percentage, which is really strong. And then he was also a workhorse runner. He had a career backfield dominator rating of 81%. Peaking at 94%. Like he like was the backfield. He also had 1.27 yards per route run, ran 15 routes per game. That combination is bullish. It's not like amazing, but he's someone that you look at like, yeah, this guy can kind of do all the things. He's capable at basically everything. And then the reason to put him out there is actually because he is this very fast running back. He's big enough to handle a solid workload, but then he also gives you this explosive element, which, by the way, we know all these teams are really, really looking for. And Bhayshul Tuten,
true.
Like, I think it's really weird that Bhayshul Tuten didn't get that much run last year, and then as like a 4.3 240 guy is sort of questioned whether or not he has breakaway ability. Like, yeah, he does. He didn't do it a ton on a limited workload, but like small sample size, like, ever heard of it? Like, it's just not a concern. It would be a concern if he was also really inconsistent. And then you're like, damn, does this dude even know how to run at an NFL level? But he's hitting the right hole. He's doing what he's asked to do on a given run. He's just not popping these big runs yet. Like, that'll come if he keeps if he keeps running Liam Cohen run plays as designed, he's going to start ripping off long runs with 4.32 speed. Like that's just upside, just straight up upside. So, I mean, that part of it just seems like kind of goofy that like he wouldn't, if he's a consistent runner, that somehow he wouldn't have any breakaway ability. And maybe he's not going to have as much breakaway ability as the 40 time would suggest. You know, certainly some guys are faster in the 40 than they are in game speed, but just that like he's kind of like a plotter or something. Like, no, not as a second year guy with a 4.32 40 last year. Like that's just pretty unlikely. So I think I'm excited about his ability, you know, as a 1A back. Give me him as a 1A back. Great. He catches the ball and he rips long runs, and he's pretty good around the goal line. Like the other thing is he's a hammer. He's a kind of a bowling ball. He's undersized as far as height, right?
But he's like 210. He's like
he's stocky. He's stocky.
Like, hold on. 5'9", 206. But I would bet you that was his college. I bet you he's definitely hasn't gotten taller, but I bet you he's bigger and stronger than that now. So like 5'9", 210. Like Kerrane is actually kind of a small little physical runner, and he's like 195 pounds. This dude is the same height, but 10, 15 pounds bigger at least than him.
Yeah. And Rodriguez, he's 25 and he ran a 4.52. So I think like as far as the explosiveness element goes, you have a big advantage with Tuten. And yeah, I mean, I also think like the fact that he took over his college backfields is also another path to upside. Like he's someone that earned trust at two different schools. One of the ways that we were worried he might lose trust in the NFL is fumbling. Fumbling was an issue for him in college. It wasn't an issue last year. They've actually talked about how maybe it was like too much something that he was thinking about. And kind of now that he's figured the fumbling stuff out at the NFL level, which he did have one fumble last year, but only one fumble on 87 attempts, he's potentially going to be able to loosen up a little bit and focus more on kind of ripping off big plays. So, the fumbling thing I always thought was like a little bit over, because like he only had, I don't think he fumbled at all at not NC State. It was A&T, I think.
A&T and Central, whatever. One of the D1AA schools.
And then he did fumble at Virginia Tech, I think, is the way it went. But he, I tend to think that was a big thing for Jonathan Taylor. If you remember coming out, people are like, oh, he fumbles. So I don't know. The fumbling thing is always, it's like kind of small sample stuff. People tend to run with it. But
it's also a fixable. It's a fixable issue. Like this isn't like you either run 4.32 or you don't. You can get a little faster, but you can't there's not much you can do about it. But the fumbling thing is like, sure, it's an issue if you don't work on it, but like, this is his job now. You know what I mean? Like he's a professional football player and his job is to run with the football. You can get better at holding on to the football, even though it's going to be more difficult at the NFL level, obviously.
Yeah. And it was, I do think, a point of emphasis for him coming in that they didn't want to see that carry over, but it hasn't. And and that he did something else that's actually pretty impressive, which have this really, really strong success rate. So again, it wouldn't really surprise me if from a carry perspective, he and Rodriguez are pretty close. It would surprise me if you're like, yeah, and give me Rodriguez. You get the guy who catches passes and the guy who's a lot more explosive. And I don't think he's going to be like losing a battle at the goal line. I don't expect either one of them will dominate goal line touches. I think both guys will get work there, but you're getting, basically the guy who's good.
Right.
Which, I mean, again, Chris Rodriguez is like fine from a real life perspective, but from a fantasy scoring point of view, like who is going to just much more easily hit your lineup on a similar workload, we want to be betting on Tuten.
Also, not to keep going back to the Malik Neighbors thing, but it's just top of mind. This is one of those situations where explaining how it happens is like mission impossible. I don't see how anyone could specifically explain, because I think they like LaQuint Allen. I think LaQuint Allen could end up being this sort of Samaje Perine-esque thorn in the side of backfield mates that he is with in his career. I think he has a pretty long NFL career ahead of him in a role like that, right? P. Ryan and Dario Gumbawale and, you know, those guys. I don't think
Yeah.
he's like, I mean, he's probably a better runner than those guys, but P. Ryan when he was younger wasn't that bad. I mean, he
Right.
just broke records at Oklahoma and stuff. Anyway, so like, you know, you're like, oh, well, what happens if LeQuint plays some passing downs and Chris Rodriguez steals 10 carries a game? What? I'm like, I understand those concerns. The reason why we're able to get him at these prices and why I agree with you that he might fall as the summer news stuff rolls in and right, Chris Rodriguez is first in line with the running backs or whatever, right? When that happens, the reason why we're able to get him at these prices is because of those concerns. And we're playing a game where it's specific to best ball, but like Dynasty would be the same way, right? I'm playing a game where I really need these like kind of insane ceiling outcomes. They come in a variety of different ways, but what I really need is like, dude, I got to beat like a fucking million people in a tournament. You know what I mean? Like I got to beat. Yes, I only got to beat 10 guys in the original pod, but Bhayshul Tuten goes in every draft. How do I beat all these other teams? And then specifically, how do I get, like you talked about, super teams with like Cam Scat, right, building an early season or an early draft Cam Skattebo super team. Like, how do I get to week 17? And I have this team where I'm like, dude, I got like 5 running backs that could all go fucking nuts this week. I got multiple stacks that can all go nuts this week, right? Like I have this depth of all this upside. Like, how do I get there? It's like buying these like potential superstar talents, especially on good offenses, at discounts and just saying, you know, I'm not really sure how much Chris Rodriguez is going to, I'm not really sure how fun this is going to be like for the first little while, but I feel pretty confident he is clearly the highest ceiling back here. And like, would you be shocked if next year we're doing this same thing and we're like, man, it was really fun getting Bhayshul Tuten in the 60s and 70s last year because now I got to take him at pick 14 or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that is in the cards, and I want to draft those guys. And if they fail, they fail. But like, you know, David Montgomery versus Bhayshul Tuten. Like, I'm not trying to be a hater for David Montgomery, but I know what kind of upside one brings versus the, you know, maybe more solid floor of a Montgomery, the home run swing with the talent and the offense and everything from a Tuten. I think is a slam dunk.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I believe with these types of tournaments, right? You gotta get to week 17. You know, almost the entire regular season. You know, almost the entire NFL season. I mean, is like one round. Weeks 1 through 14 equal one round of a 4-round tournament. So it's like, are you willing to eat shit in week 3? It would probably be helpful if you're willing to like not nail it in week 3.
Yeah.
And look a little silly in week 3. Like, because if you're not, then you're probably sacrificing something on the back end a little bit because you want to feel real good about how. And then, you know, I just got unlucky at the end of the year, but I nailed week 3, bro. I nailed it. You know, and it's like,
I love
Tuten. You talk about Tuten versus Montgomery. I bet you that take looks real bad in week 3.
100%.
I bet David Montgomery versus Bhayshul Tuten. Like there's a good chance that the idea that
in
like
week 12.
Tuten and Montgomery were equivalent picks,
Yeah.
or that Tuten was the better pick is like people are like laughing.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I think Tuten over the course of the season has a much higher ceiling. Like he has the chance to start in a committee and then earn. In the same way, like, remember last year we had to like deal with the Braylon Allen, is Breece Hall, you know, is he the starter? Breece Hall's they're talking up all the committee stuff. Like, let him talk, dude. Breece Hall is going to run circles around this guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not close. Like, we don't have to pretend that these guys are equivalent at all, right? And then, of course, I mean, Allen gets hurt, but Breece Hall just got paid, and they say, "What about the running back by committee?" And they go, "Oh, that's history." That was a dumb thing we tried to do. We're not doing that anymore. Like we have to like keep in mind like what's likely to actually occur, not just what, like, you know, based on probably what was a career year for Chris Rodriguez.
Yeah.
You know, him getting paid, you know, a little bit, and them bringing him in optimistic about what he can contribute, and probably will contribute some, especially in the beginning of the year. But as we get down, you know, mid-season, end of season, who's going to emerge and be like a guy especially, compared to David Montgomery, who I actually do take, and I don't want to make this a negative David Montgomery thing.
Right. That's I want to make that clear, because that happens, right? Like we're having the conversation.
But you're getting like a round discount.
Flanoy's dribbling. You're like, oh, why is it? It's not about that. It's just names happen to come up when you're trying to, create comparisons. And like David Montgomery is just a categorically different type of pick than Bhayshul Tuten is.
And he's a solid pick.
He's fine, but it's like this. No, I don't think anyone should, even if you really, really, really like David Montgomery, I think you should not mistake him for the type of home run swing that a Bhayshul Tuten is. They're not the same style of pick, even though they both serve their purpose.
I agree. Yeah, and I think with Tuten, you talk about the potential to build super teams. I think the biggest pushback like that I would have on my own take would be like, why not just wait then? If you think he's going to drop, if you think he's going to potentially be this really big value. And my answer to that would be, because I think he's a really good pick in the 6th round. And I don't know if that's going to happen. So if you're going to give me him in the 6th, then I'm just going to take that. When he was going in the 5th, in the early 5th, even like last week a little bit, I would sometimes take him over like a Quinshon Judkins or a David Montgomery. I'm probably not doing that anymore. Like you compared like him versus Montgomery to that point, I will just take David Montgomery now with the anticipation that I'm going to get plenty of Bhayshul Tuten, and it's going to be at a cheaper price. And potentially I'm going to get him paired with David Montgomery on some teams as I go 5th round Montgomery and 6th round Tuten. So, if I want to get any Henderson, Judkins, those backs, I kind of need to just let Bhayshul Tuten come back to me in the 6th, and that's kind of where I'm at with it. So that's as far as the CLV element, that he's probably going to fall element. That's how I'm playing that. In the late 5th, when those guys are gone, I am currently just taking Tuten. But as I said, it's possible I end up kind of just trying to push him to the 6th and get more other receivers that I like there, or take like a Lamar Jackson paired with Zay Flowers in the late 5th, something like that. So yeah, I'm kind of willing to let him fall a little bit more, but it's like the running backs that I think he's in the same tier with are all gone now. And I guess you could, like, even Price is usually gone, by the time Tuten comes up. So that's a big part of it for me too, is like, if I need a running back, I think Tuten's a great pick, and I'm in the 6th round, just because he might go in the 7th a couple months from now doesn't do anything for me. So I'm just going to take him. Yep. But yeah, I am thinking through the fact that he might fall. It's just a lot of the time, I don't think it's real pertinent to the team I'm building.
I think you should think through those situations. Again, last time maybe that I mentioned neighbors, right? Like I'm thinking through the fact that, like, if we keep getting semi-negative to negative news, what that's going to do to his price, right? The first thing I will say, Bhayshul Tuten goes at pick 65 on DraftKings. So if you really do like him in the mids, he goes after all those guys. He goes after literally everyone we've named in this tier by a lot.
DraftKings, the ADP updates quicker, so it's also the site where I think probably gives us a better read on where things are headed. When we know guys are kind of falling.
Even if guys fall, to kind of combine with like what you said about Skattebo earlier, like it. So the hard, and this is very difficult because we all want to get the best prices, of course. But like, okay, let's say Cam Skattebo. Let's say we both nail these picks. Cam Skattebo and Bhayshul Tuten smashes. You want to have them, but the person said, I want to get the best prices on these guys, and so I listened to you, right? You guys said Cam Skattebo might rise, because of continued injury optimism, right? Okay, so I'm going to take my Skattebo now, but I'm going to wait on Tuten because, we might get more Chris Rodriguez, we might get murky stuff, whatever. And so I'm going to wait because I think he's going to keep falling. You were right that both of those guys were smashes, and you never drafted them on the same team.
Yeah.
Right. Or you waited, and then you got the cheap Tuten price in August.
Right, but Skattebo's on the other side of the board now.
But now you screwed it up and
Yeah.
So
late 6th Tuten, but it's late 3rd Skattebo.
Right, you cut off your nose to spite your face. So like, it's That I'm not saying that that's wrong, but those can be when you think about only individual players and like getting the right prices in a vacuum, that's when you can run into a little bit of trouble. And it just happens to be that those two guys are it really is true. I would guess that Skattebo rises and Tuten falls, but I like them both nonetheless at their price, and I'm going to draft them together right now. But I am, to your point, I'm going to think about it. Like I'm going to think about what this means. And like you said, what I think it really means is sometimes you can just push these guys. If you don't get them, you don't get them.
Yeah. But that's how if there's fallers I love, I tend to just try to push them around a turn.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I'm like, hey, let me see what happens if I don't take this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Does he just come back anyway?
Right.
Because then, you know,
does the other person watches this
still
video
want
and they're
to
like,
take them.
They're like, there's somebody watches this video and they're drafting at the turn, and Pat said he loved Tuten. He didn't draft him. Is he playing fucking mind games with me? What does he know?
I don't want him in this draft, and I won't. So don't snipe him, because it's not even a snipe. I'll just pass on him again.
So when Pat tries this in your draft, know what he's doing on you, or is he, or is he? All right, I'm gonna move to a flex, and to the surprise of no one, it is a wide receiver, but there are not enough spots on the board here for me to discuss all the wide receivers that I'm excited about. And also, I do want to be honest. I was thinking about putting this sort of stuff in the wild card section, but I want to get it off my chest since I'm going to pick another wide receiver. Running back sucks ass this year. Like, I understand why people are like drafting more and higher running backs and why they're going higher and all that kind of stuff. The lack of rookie influx of talent
changes things.
It is uncomfortable. And so again, why are Tuten and Skattebo types of guys that I think are awesome? Why is like David Montgomery, like, dude, if we did the show 4 years ago and David Montgomery came up as I picked 50 on the Texans or whatever, I'd be like, stop it. This is so stupid. Like, I'm not doing that. Like, Tony Pollard goes at pick 100.
Well, we used to take David Montgomery in a committee with Gibbs in the 5th.
Right.
So it's like not crazy that we would take him in the 5th as a starter.
But I would have been able to get stuff. I would have been able to get stuff later, right? You mentioned the Chase Brown thing. Like, there would be talented young players, whether they're, just
I think to be honest, I think it's Pollard. I think it's Pollard, Ramondre, and Chuba, who Chuba's kind of working his way up actually. But those three guys would be that at the 5-6 turn.
Yeah.
And that's who we'd be like, nope. I'm going to take Tuten,
right?
Quinshon Judkins, or maybe he's too clear cut of a starter, but certainly Tuten would be. And Harvey's going in the 11th, so I'm going to grab him.
Yep.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I take a bunch of Chuba. I have Chuba ranked ahead of ADP, and not because I have to defend it all the time, like in our Discord where people are like, aren't you worried about this with Chuba? Aren't you like? I'm like, yes, but do you understand this landscape? I'm still a little bit lighter early running backs.
I take some Chuba.
You're like, you want Bowers, you want, you like Bowers, you like Justin Jefferson, you like AJ, you want to get AJ Brown before he moves up. Also, when we all know he's going to get traded, but he will get the inevitable rise when it actually happens on June 1st, right? You want all these things. It's like, well, something's got to give, because you also don't like the running backs after pick 100. So like, I got to get some fucking running back points at some point, so the things have shifted. One thing that has shifted, my flex spot is a guy that is just injured, endlessly injured, but always productive when he's on the field, came back and played the rest of the entire season after he came back, and was honestly so much better than I ever thought he was going to be. And that's Christian Watson. Christian Watson goes around, I should have had this up. I apologize.
He's like early 6th.
I have DraftKings ADP up, so I do apologize. Okay. So like pick 60, early, same thing. Early 6th round, we will call it. And so he is a little bit of a crutch in terms of a guy that I do feel a little bit cozy taking Skattebo or Tuten or Chuba or any, right, Jacobs or whatever. Saquon, obviously Gibbs, Bijan, taking these early running backs because I have what I project as a wide receiver 1 in a good offense. The Packers are not Lions like we talked about, but this is a good offense who just have been running these insane rotations for multiple different seasons. and had a come to LaFleur had a come to Jesus moment in the offseason. Was like they all kept complaining to me about their roles
Like,
and not
about all the
know.
stupid stuff I was doing.
Yeah, like they were all very unhappy. And it took me 3 years, but I finally realized that maybe the wide receivers not knowing if they're going to run 20 routes or 40 routes on a given week, whether Wicks was going to be a starter or Watson or Reed or Golden or whatever, or fucking Bo Melton was going to play corner or wide receiver. All that tomfoolery was probably not going well. So Wicks is gone. Dobbs is gone. They didn't add to the wide receiver room. They drafted Matthew Golden in the first round, but Christian Watson came back and stepped in and was flat out awesome. I don't really understand, given his injury track record, how he came back so quickly and was so good. But he actually had his most efficient season. He's actually been incredibly efficient for his entire career. In 4 seasons in the NFL, is a 2.06 yards per route run. Last year, he was at 2.28, his best. He's a high ADOT player, 16.5 for his career, 17 last year. Jordan Love loves to YOLO ball it a little bit. And he's just a genuinely good, not just downfield flyer anymore. He has evolved into more than that. Sometimes people say that about like Alec Pierce, and I'm like, I didn't really see all that much more than a down the field flyer. Like, the Colts keep saying that. The Colts have said that, like, he's really developed and all these other stuff. And I'm like, is that other stuff in the room with us? Because I haven't really seen it. Christian Watson, I think, did develop that. Now he's still a little bit more of that down the field flyer type guy. But I mentioned that yards per route run. That was 9th in the NFL among wide receivers with at least 50 targets. The only wide receivers who are more efficient than him on a yards per route basis: Puka, JSN, Zay Flowers, who's just a stud, by the way. We should probably like make a Zay Flowers category because he always goes.
I put Zay Flowers on chip chasing. We did a similar thing, and I put him as the league winner.
He's so good. And now they don't have any other wide receivers but these slapdick rookies. And yeah. Anyway, Amon-Ra, CeeDee, Pickens, Burden, Drake London, and then Christian Watson. There was only 17 guys over 2 yards per route run, and he was well above 2 yards per route run. Came back like seemingly healthy. I understand he has injury concerns, but that is baked into the price to get this level of talent, this level of upside, the role stuff, right, with Dobbs and Wicks and all the tight ends. Kraft is coming off of a serious injury. Seems like he's going to be okay, but he's still coming off of a serious injury. Micah Parsons is coming off of a serious injury, so maybe the defense is a little bit worse, than it was. Like, he just seems to me like this awesome 6th round wide receiver in a climate that I could really use it. And I think, I'm just guessing, but I think like the track record of injury is really what's keeping him here, and that creates a buying opportunity for me. Like, I'm willing to accept that injury risk at this price because I'm getting paid off in a variety of ways. Even he doesn't have to play all 17. Just like, don't miss don't tear your hamstring again, which is of course a risk, but that's we got to risk some things to get some upside, and I think he has a ton of upside at his price.
The one thing I would kind of push back on is that I don't know that he is kind of this do everything, or not do everything, but I think he's a deep threat. And what the way I view him is as a deep threat, but one who actually can earn targets. So he's not just,
that's a good way to put it,
like getting sacrificed to the defense. He's not just stretching the field and opening up targets for other people. And that's something with Alec Pierce where I'm like, I'm still not sure he's much above that. Like, I think Alec Pierce kind of graduated last year to a deep threat who can earn targets, but we've only seen 1 year of it. And even in that year, he wasn't as good as Christian Watson has been. So, I mean, he was good. He had 2.10 yards per route run, Alec Pierce, last year. But Watson coming off an ACL.
On an average depth of target 20 yards downfield.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But Watson was at average depth of target of 17.4. He was at 18.7 the year before, 16.2 before that. His rookie year was at 14.3, which is like deep, but at least like a little bit more intermediate stuff. But
that was Rodgers, right?
That was Rodgers. Yeah. So in the Jordan Love era, he really has been a true deep threat. And that's where I have like a little bit of hesitation with him. He's just not a priority for me where he goes, but like he could easily become a priority. It would only take like 5 picks. Like if he were to if he were to fall, because there's that I kind of like the 5-6 turn, but
It is good.
I don't like the mid sixth.
Right.
I don't like the mid sixth. Like, so if
you hit a point in the 6th round where it gets like there's for like 3 rounds they all feel the same. Everybody feels the same.
Yeah. But like Jordan Tyson, I like Jordan Tyson. I want Jordan Tyson. I like Carnell Tate, who goes right around that same range. Those rookies are a little bit more priority for me than Christian Watson. But, you know, it's kind of like Rome Odunze. Like Rome Odunze's got an ADP on Underdog 56. Don't really take him there.
Yep.
But when I see Rome Odunze in the middle of the 6th and Jordan Tyson's gone, I'm like, thank God. You know, and like I'm not drafting a ton of Marvin Harrison, and I like him less than Watson. But if I'm at the 6-7 turn and I need a receiver and Lemon's gone and Harrison's there, I'm very thankful. There's kind of like he's a better version of that type of thing, where if he were the last in a tier, I'd be probably scooping him up. But he's kind of in the middle of a tier, and he's not my favorite guy in the tier, because I do wonder, like, especially down the stretch when you have Tucker Kraft back, how much of his role is kind of like consistent target share and how much of it is more kind of a boom bust, spike weeky, you know, splash play type of profile. So it's a like it, don't love it type of thing for me with Watson.
And I like though how you put and I definitely should have phrased better. I don't think that Christian Watson can do absolutely everything as a wide receiver. I think he can do more than what we thought he could do when he came into the league and when he was a younger prospect. But I think it is what you said, that he is a deep threat, but that can earn targets. I mean, he earned targets at 22% of his routes. He was earning a target on. And so you combine that with that ADOT. And now theoretically, thanks LaFleur for getting him on the field a little bit more. Right. And so hopefully that raises the floor from a fantasy perspective a little bit more too. And maybe it does grow his role. Like, I guess this is going to sound both positive and negative, I guess. But like, if Matthew Golden isn't him, and I don't think Matthew Golden is him, Jaden Reed is fine. He's a good football player. But like, you ain't building the plane out of Jaden Reed. You know, he's not that good. Otherwise, we would have seen it by now.
I think he's pretty good. I just think he hasn't been able to play as much as he should, and maybe that's because of limitations of his game and size and stuff. But
I think that's it. You can't build the plane. He is
you can't build the plane
a really fucking nice plane, but you can't build the plane out of him. I don't think you can build a plane out of Christian Watson either. But I guess that's I'm talking about the risk now. Is like maybe the Dobbs types were like actually kind of helpful. Because it's like Romeo Dobbs is just this mid-ass X. But like sometimes you just need the big body guy who you can just like, whatever, he's gonna be kind of open. you know what I mean? Like, you know, it's like, dude, we need 7 yards. You know, like let's get the guy who can, you know, make a contested catch 8 yards down the field. And Matthew Golden is not that. Jaden Reed, quite frankly, isn't that. And it remains to be seen if Christian Watson is that. Now Tucker Kraft can be that, but again, he's coming off of a pretty serious injury, which we tend to hold against some people and don't hold. You know, I never know what we're supposed to do with the injuries. Like Tucker Kraft seems to be like nobody gives a fuck that he tore his ACL, but
I do.
I know I do too, but like, right, George Kittle, no one cares that, like, that's just dude's going in the 90s on DraftKings and shit, and I'm like, do people know that he took, like, did we get the, I keep using this one too, like, did people MIB flashy thing to people after the season, like, you know, he tore his Achilles like at the end of the year, right, and he's older than 30, but anyway, I do wonder though, like, someone probably has to do more stylistically in that Packers offense to like succeed, because Jaden Reed, like you said, is a good football player at the things that Jaden Reed is good at football at, which is valuable. Matthew Golden, you know, I've been pretty skeptical since he came into the league. Since you know, before he got drafted. And even if he's successful, I think it's like not in like this alpha target dominator way, this like traditional, you know, boundary wide receiver.
At this point, like, let's be honest, like Quentin Johnson would be a win. If he becomes Quentin Johnson, you'd be like,
big
nice
win. Yeah, I think so. He's kind of on the QJ, like the QJ is we're at the fork in the road. You either become QJ or you become like Jalen Hyatt or whatever. Like that's the fork he's on. So, yeah, I think it's possible that Watson has to evolve into some more, but can he? Maybe that's a Packers risk. But I think there's a little juice to squeeze out of him in a role wise, because they don't have anybody else that can do that stuff.
Yeah, and kind of to the point of the ADOT and the role, like there's these deep threat guys. I tend to think about it as like you have your deep threats who just kind of stretch the field for other people. You have your deep threats who earn targets and are going to be in somewhat more of a limited role, but still are like a key part of the offense. And then you've got your deep threat and number one wide receiver.
Yeah.
And that would be like a Terry McLaurin would be that type of guy. McLaurin's getting older and, he might not be someone you're that interested in this year, but certainly for just thinking about like an archetype, I think Terry McLaurin has been that guy. And, even last year with Daniels hurt, 2.22 yards per route run, so similar efficiency to Watson, but he had an ADOT of 14.1 last year, which is lower than Watson has ever had. He had 14.3 as a rookie, and then again went up to 16.2, 18.7, 17.4. Terry McLaurin started at 14.6, so very similar, but actually has never reached that high again. He was 9.9, 13.9, 13.1, 12.2, 13.5, 14.1, and you just have more of a mix of intermediate routes.
Yep.
With a Terry McLaurin. We've seen at times Chris Olave be a similar kind of deep threat, but also the number one. He was a 14.9 ADOT in his rookie season and has since fallen as he's gotten more intermediate work as well as those deep shots, 13.9, 10.6, 12.3 last year. So it's not about like, oh, it's a great thing to be able to win deep, but how much intermediate work are you getting on top of that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think I kind of want to be more in on Watson because I think he's really good, but that's kind of the part of it where I worry a little bit about, is he going to be able to break out as like a number one, or is he just a really good, like kind of secondary type of attack, even if the primary is like split, even if the primary is like Tucker Kraft plus Jaden Reed, it's kind of an underneath sort of attack leading the way. And then Watson hits you over the top as a counter punch. That tends to be like what I think is most likely, but I do think Watson's fun, and it would be pretty awesome actually if he does emerge as like the number one, because that offense becomes way more fun if he is like in that Olave number one plus deep threat role that could take the offense to another level. So I do, again, I wish he was easier for me to click, because I think it'd be really fun if he's just a little less expensive and basically didn't go ahead of guys I like slightly more.
And I think it's possible he might. I don't know how much like Christian Watson buzz there's going to be. They are going to be like the San Francisco 49ers are going to shove Kalen Black and Dejon Stribling down our throats all summer to try to cope with this, shitstorm that they created of their draft picks. We're going to get the Matthew Golden fucking press tour all summer. Like, they didn't do all this because of, they know Christian Watson is good. They know Jaden Reed is good. They know Tucker Kraft is good. The reason why these changes were made was because they drafted Matthew Golden in the first round, and he didn't play that much last year, and he wasn't very good. And so those other guys are gone because they need a role for Matthew Golden. And so he's going to be the guy that I think gets the big press tour this summer, which could mean, right, if Matthew Golden, sometimes this happens. It's like, just because Matthew Golden's getting pressed doesn't mean Christian Watson needs to fall. But sometimes that,
right.
Best ball drafters are not always, the most logical. But I think Christian Watson,
Golden, the number one there, might become a question. And I mean, Golden had 1.53 yards per hour last year, which is better than I think you probably remember, right?
Yeah.
It's not terrible. It's just that he didn't play.
Right.
And he missed some chances to juice that number with some of those longer, targets that he didn't connect on. But yeah, I mean, I think you can kind of like sort of hold out hope for him, but yeah, my preference would be that people get excited about Matthew Golden and Christian Watson drops, because that seems like a pretty easy thing to go against.
I'm also drafting Matthew. Like I'm not trying to be.
I'm not.
I'm not trying to make it like he's in that spot where I'm plugging my nose and I'm going to take my medicine of this guy who's probably going to run a bunch of routes and was a first round pick in the NFL draft. And I don't really like it. And I didn't really like him. But as you said, I should have been, kinder. Last year was okay on a small sample. And I agree. There was a couple misses, right, on some home run balls that Love missed him on or whatever. But welcome, dude. If we did that for everybody, we would be like, well, guess what his yards per route run would have been if he caught that 50, if Jordan Love didn't miss.
Well, the problem is that actually you can't do that for everyone because most people like played enough where one long catch wouldn't change things.
Right. Guess what Tyquan Thornton's yards per route run would have been fucking last year. You would have thought Tyquan Thornton's the new Deshaun Jackson if he never got missed a home run ball. It's like that's part of the profile, right? It's like it's kind of what's impressive about Christian Watson, quite frankly, is that he's kind of that down the field type guy, but he's always efficient, right? So there's no excuses. Anyway, I'm not trying to.
I just think with Golden, like, when we did a pod last February, I would assume something like that, and we were talking Matthew Golden and Trey Harris, and they were both going in kind of the early like 120 something kind of range
in the big board times.
And I was taking Golden in part because I thought he would be a high pick. Wasn't as clear at that point that he'd be a first round, but it's that campaign was kind of getting going and looked like he was undervalued in the best ball market relative to his future draft capital. And I, at let's say an ADP of 106, pretty into Matthew Golden before I'd ever seen him play in the NFL. His ADP currently is 106. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like the prospect profile was very draft capital dependent, which is something I'm open to. I mean, we just talked about Sean Stribling.
Right.
Like I'm open to that stuff. But if you're going to show up in the NFL and not show up for a full year, then like the draft capital takes a pretty big hit for me heading into year 2. Now I know it's going to get him some additional opportunity. And clearly, like if Matthew Golden had been a 7th round pick and did this, I don't think they're trading Dontavian Wicks. Like they would have some other. He wouldn't be a part of the plan.
Ask Bo Melton. Yeah, ask Bo Melton. He was a 7th round pick, and they're like, "Fuck you, go play corner."
Right. So yeah, the team level commitment's already paying off in huge ways for Matthew Golden. But it's as far as like, do I think this guy is good as a first round pick? I haven't seen play. And steps into an opportunity, I'm definitely willing to bet on that as long as the price doesn't get out of control, which it eventually did last year, by the way, on Golden. But, if I want to bet on a first round pick who's pretty suspect, but there's target opportunity, why wouldn't I just take Omar Cooper? He's going like pick 140, like it's kind of, I just have a hard time with Matthew Golden after a rookie year no-show. And yeah, there's going to be more opportunity, but like Watson is definitely better than this guy. Like he might not be able to do everything. It would take a
miracle for him to get on Christian Watson's level.
He's not Christian Watson. Watson is so much more talented than Matthew Golden. I'm not saying Watson's going to crush necessarily, but like as far as real life value, being able to earn targets, being able to beat defenses deep, like he's just, I mean, they probably drafted Golden to replace Watson, who they didn't think was ever going to be Watson again. And Watson's Watson again.
And he's better. He came back better.
He's so much better.
I didn't think he was going to be. He wasn't in my rankings last year. I didn't think he was going to play.
I didn't think he was really going to play either. Yeah, I wasn't drafting him at all.
7 or whatever, he comes back and you're like, what the fuck? This guy's better than he was before.
It's
what
crazy.
did they do? Give him new legs?
Yeah, and then like, okay, so maybe Matthew Golden's not, this incredible deep threat, but he's fast, but that's just he's not as good as Christian Watson, which is a high bar, so he's kind of their go-to guy on deep shots. But hey, he could be really good underneath. Like, oh, is he better than like Tucker Kraft, who's like a yak monster, or Jaden Reed, who's like really good at that? Baby like, what is he going to do? He'd have to be, a really, really strong intermediate target earner to really stand out from the competition here, I think. And I don't really have any evidence that he's that. He wasn't that in college.
Mm-mm.
I just don't. I just have a really hard time. To me, taking my medicine is not drafting a receiver here, right? There's some guys I like. I like Josh Downs, who's going just ahead of him. I like Xavier Worthy, who goes like 10 picks later. I like Casey Concepcion, who's in this general range. So it's not like, an avoid for me at the wide receiver position here, but there's other stuff I can do. I don't need it to be take Matthew Golden there.
It's true.
And if I want to, I want to take the Matthew Golden type of price. Let's say I wanted to bet on a first round wide receiver who didn't play as much as I would like in his rookie season, but I'm going back to the well based on team level commitment, and I want it to be a player who I actually believe is good. Then give me Travis Hunter, who's going to be my flex selection. Like,
oh baby,
Travis Hunter is going like 40 picks behind this guy. And that's after rising. He used to go 50 picks past him. He used to be in the 55 range. He's up to 147 now. I'm going to be very, very overweight Travis Hunter for as long as this type of price lasts. I still think he's about 15 picks undervalued, maybe even a little more. Hunter, there was this quote that they're going to play him more on defense. And then there's been recent quotes that we never said that meant less offense. Why do you guys keep assuming that's what we meant? That's definitely not what we meant. We're going to play him, quote, as much as humanly possible. So I think there's a world where we just got those quotes in reverse order, right? Like, we're going to play him as much as humanly possible. It's always been his dream to play both ways. We continue to support that dream. Nothing has changed about our plan. We'd like him to play more on defense, but that it definitely does not mean at the expense of offense. And then we got a later quote being like, yeah, we expect Hunter to play more cornerback this year, with the previous context of that specifically does not mean, but instead it's like they're having to like backtrack it feels like, and people kind of believe the first thing, which is that he's going to play more cornerback, and kind of filling that in their minds of like more cornerback and therefore less wide receiver, which, I mean, I do think he could play a little less wide receiver than he did last year. Maybe he plays significantly, fewer wide receiver snaps per game, especially in some games, right? Maybe we get games where Travis Hunter just really isn't much of a factor that week on offense. Like, I could definitely see that. At the same time, he had 76% route participation last year in his first 7 games as a rookie. Like, we talk about guys who went on to break out in their first 7 games, didn't really play. Like hit the ground running. 76% route participation while also playing a bunch of cornerback last year. Like, they did do the two-way player thing. That wasn't like a theoretical thing. They actually did it. And he ran a ton of routes. So if he is at 65% route participation, right, just lop off 11% from last year, I think I'm going to be pretty happy when I take him at 145. If he's at 55%, I'm not too worried, if I'm taking him around 150, right? It's really like, as he get down into, the 45% range, where I'm like, okay, this is now not so great. But you get all the contingent value of any one of the 3 guys getting hurt. He would vault into a bigger role. You get kind of game plan inconsistency, which I think will be something that will be a double-edged sword, right? There's going to be some weeks where he just isn't really a huge part of the game plan on offense, probably, or maybe a better way to put it is he's a really priority part of the game plan on defense, and so he just plays less on offense. But I do think there's going to be some weeks where he is going to go off on offense, even if he's at like 60% route participation, right? I mean, like, am I getting – one way to think about it is like, I'm getting Josh Downs or Jaden Reed, who are in that kind of 60-ish%. I think Downs was 65, Reed was just under 60% last year. I'm getting like that level of playing time, but I'm getting a guy who was like an off the charts route runner in college, the number 2 overall pick, a super strong prospect, provided he actually plays at the wide receiver position, but if you're getting, I'm getting like a Jaden Reed level role, 2025 Jaden Reed level role or 2025 Josh Downs level role, but I'm getting a player who's more explosive, a better route runner. That at 150, like at a 50 pick discount to Josh Downs, I get Travis Hunter. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like a lot of ways to win. And I've got a bunch of outs of how I win here. And yeah, there's some downside, but even in scenarios where like I misread this and it actually the stuff about him playing more in defense does come at the expense of his offensive role in a pretty meaningful way. Like I still think I'm going to get, some spike weeks from time to time as they work in Travis Hunter over the course of the season on some screens, some design stuff. Like they're not going to abandon that. He was the number 2 overall pick and they drafted him play both ways. Like it's egg on their face if they don't at least like try to get him going in some weeks. I think we get that. There's some risk that you're like, oh, I drafted Marvin Mims, but like, I don't know, man. Like even like Marvin Mims has been able to be like semi-relevant, and you're like spending 150. It's really like when you get into, if he were to go in like the 115, 125 range, then you're starting to look at like that's a lot to pay for a guy who might be Marvin Mims. But we're still, God, we're like 30 picks away from where I'd start to be thinking about that, or at least 20, 25 picks away from where I would start to think like that. And he makes it a lot easier to not take a guy like Golden and not, not try to load up, not be like, oh, I gotta take Romeo Dobbs here. I'm screwed. Like, you could take Dobbs, I guess, sometimes, but you could take Jacoby Myers sometimes. Like some of these guys, okay, yeah, I'll mix them in, but to like never feel like I have to take, this guy's my wide receiver 4 or whatever in the 120s, a guy I'm just not that excited about, or even 120s, but it starts way earlier than that. It starts in like the 70s. These wide receivers that I'm just not enthused about. Having him back there that late, honestly, it's enough. It's like, yeah, I'm taking him a ton. I'm also like changing decisions I'm doing earlier in the draft to some extent, knowing that he's there.
This is so funny because I'm gonna start one of the last couple things that you said that is I've thought a lot about Travis Hunter. He's been a fun is not the word I would use talking point, because it is I have found Travis Hunter is sort of like the Javonte versus Jaden Blue versus whatever wars of last summer, where everybody has their take. You are never ever going to convince the other person of right. They either because he's so unique. I mean, he truly is a unicorn like prospect, right? When's the last time someone got drafted 2nd overall to play wide receiver and corner?
Never.
He's so unique. So everybody comes with preconceived notions about what he is. And we all have varying levels of opinions of him as a football, just like as a prospect, as a wide receiver prospect, as a best ball pick for this year, whatever. The thing that has gotten me more interested, because I am not a Travis Hunter guy, is sort of some of the stuff you said at the end, where I think there are many ways to win, which is nice, and there is contingent value, which is big. And then there is the whole, like, we talked about like what teams care about as it pertains to like running backs and stuff like that, right? And I talk about that all the time. So it would be disingenuous and hypocritical for me to do the like, no, you guys don't get it. This running back is never going to play because he can't pass protect, and right, and he doesn't get he doesn't get the tough yards, and teams care about that, right, and all that kind of stuff, which is true. It's true. That is objectively true. So it'd be disingenuous for me to say that and then say, yeah, but the Jaguars aren't going to care if they have egg on their face if Travis Hunter is just like an above average NFL corner, even though they mortgage the future to have this guy who plays on both sides of the football. So that's sort of been, my wheels have been turning because I was probably a little stubborn before. Part of me being a little stubborn was because I didn't think Travis Hunter was the superstar level college wide receiver prospect. I thought he won the Heisman and was a superstar college football player because he plays both sides. He's a really good corner and a really good wide receiver. And when you have that in one person, that's a fucking cheat code.
That's the Heisman.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you win the Heisman and he deserved it and whatever. But you go back and look, like, I understand some people, like, they watch the tape and they like him better than I do, who looks things. I watch the games too, but, I'm not charting routes like Matt Harmon or something like that. So I do look at things a little bit more analytically, and he was good. He was very good. No one is denying that, but he wasn't Malik Neighbors and he wasn't Marvin Harrison, and he wasn't those guys to me.
Even with the draft, like post draft, he came out worse than Tedoroa McMillan to me. Because I wasn't sure. It was really more about McMillan than Hunter, who we knew was going to be the number 2 pick, but or we thought very strongly he'd be drafted that highly. It's that McMillan it was unclear if he was going to go in the 20s, and he ends up going 8th. So after that, McMillan actually came out ahead as the wide receiver 1 in last year's class. So I would agree. I don't think he's this unbelievable, Malik Neighbors level wide receiver prospect. I do think, though, that some of his wide receiver, because he played both ways in college, like, you do have this thing of like, what if he hadn't? What if he just played wide receiver? Sure. Would that have actually boosted him analytically? I suspect that it would have. It's a tough game to play because you're not sure how much, and so, but I tend to view that as maybe a little more.
If the thesis is he's going to play both ways in the NFL, we can't say,
well,
he would have been a better.
I mean, we're seeing that play out, which is
exactly. Because I agree, I could not possibly agree more. I think if he would have played one side of the football, he would not have went second overall, but he might be a superstar in the league. On one side of the ball, but he's adamant. And look, do what you got to do, brother. Like, he seems like a good kid. He's intelligent, all that. I have no problems with him wanting to do this. But I agree that I think, like, if he'd focused on wide receiver, like, I don't know what kind of season he would have had at Colorado, man. It might have been pretty insane. And I might be singing a different tune about him as a wide receiver prospect. But the fact remains that in the NFL, he's also going to try to play both sides of the football. So that is, theoretically, if it dinged him in college playing both sides, it's probably going to ding him in the NFL as well, right? He already got injured, and the team now it was like, some people say it was a fluke, like non-contact injury, sure, but like, technically, like, almost all injuries that aren't contact are fluke. Like, being like, it's sort of like you don't get hurt sitting on the bench. The more you are not sitting on the bench.
Well, I remember that one guy, he messed up his leg in the Super Bowl jumping around on the sidelines.
There was a baseball player that just got hurt playing with his kids also. So, I guess that's not technically true. Travis Hunter, I don't think, has any kids yet. Maybe he does. I don't know. But right, like, if you're sitting on the bench, you don't get injured. The more snaps you play, the more reps you take, the more likely you are to get injured. Whether or not the actual specific injury was a fluke, the more activity you do, the more likely you are to get injured.
The more football snaps you play, it would stand to reason.
So that's always been part of the risk assessment for me. How much do we bake that in? I have no idea. My biggest concern is, I've come around to some of those perks, like we talked about. Contingent value for sure. The team wants him to play offense, both because he's a good offensive football player and because that was their whole, right? That was the whole thesis of the play. And teams just do these things, whether or not we think it's smart or not. They're not going to just move him to only play one side of the football. The problem is, like with the route participation and stuff that you were saying, it's true. He was also not very good last year. 1.32 yards per route run. I've heard, like, the last, before he got hurt, he has 12 targets for 100 yards and a touchdown. I mean, he wasn't even really that efficient in that game. He ran 51 routes. They were down by 1 million in the second half. I'm not taking away production. I'm just saying
1.98 yards per hour.
Yeah, which is good. Not like
it's good. It's not off the charts. Yeah.
He didn't go scorched earth. He went Cedric Tillman in that game. Okay. But again, I pick 150. All right, we're okay. Right. These are actually pros, not cons. But those were the first 7 games, right, that he got to play. That was his route participation pre-Jacoby Myers. He wasn't there when they had Jacoby Myers. So now it feels to me more like setting the bar at like 65% or even like 60% or something like that feels high to me, because I'm trying to manufacture where they come from. Parker Washington was straight up awesome last year. We talked about some of the Christian Watson like efficiency stats. Parker Washington was right like up in that mix with all of the best wide receivers in football last year. They're also committed to Brian Thomas Jr. They don't want to get egg on their face with the guy they took in the first round who had a really
That's
good
someone
rookie
else's
season.
egg.
That's true. That's fair. That is fair. But then they traded and extended Jacoby Myers. And so, it would, I guess it would have, and he was, Travis Hunter was playing mostly in the slot last year. 65% of his snaps were in the slot, which I think is sort of where Jacoby Myers and Parker Washington are kind of better. So it's just a little bit awkward in terms of seeing where the route participation comes from. I think he's going to play. I think he's going to get, I'm sure I've spoken hyperbolically about oh, he's just a corner before, but I never thought that he was like never going to play any wide receiver. But I'm struggling to see specifically where a fuller route share comes from, given that they have all those 3 wide receivers now. They also invested in this bullshit that the blocking tight end in the second round and stuff. Are they going to try to play more?
Bullish.
Yeah, but are they going to play more 12 personnel stuff? Because he ain't on the field when they're doing that.
They might try it. They might try it. I don't think it's gonna. I don't think it's gonna stick.
But I think I've agreed. I totally agree.
If Nate Borkicher's a problem for Travis Hunter, then I'm just wrong.
Yeah, that is.
I'm
true.
just wrong. If that's what stops Travis Hunter, then it was just straight up never going to work.
But I think it's the 3 wide receivers, right? In terms of getting to 60-something% of the routes on a consistent basis. But again, these are like very real cons for me for like taking a big bag of Travis Hunter and certainly chasing him up the board. But I have slowly started to come around to like draft the talent at a cheapish price. They're gonna probably manufacture some bullshit for him along the way. Like, even if I'm right, I'm saying like, where are these routes coming from? Where, like, and maybe he's not even all that good. Like, if that is true, I still think the egg on the face comment, like you said, they're gonna manufacture some stuff for him, and the contingent value is still enough to make him draftable when I wasn't maybe so sure of that before. But if they didn't do the Jacoby Myers deal after he got hurt, like, it's literally he played through week 7 and then Jacoby Myers came in week 8 because they needed to replace him. Because spoiler, De'Ami Brown, not him, not De'Ami Brown made like $1 million per catch last year, and that's not even an exaggeration. But he's like the Joel Embiid of wide receivers, getting paid $1 million a game. But I do still struggle to see, like, without an injury, where does the like, oh shit, you're screwed if you didn't have Travis Hunter upside come from, other than I guess, yeah, like he's really just this insane superstar, and I guess like banishes BTJ to the bench.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he needs to banish BTJ to the bench necessarily. I mean, I think those guys probably play the most different roles. Yeah. I think so. Like, I just did this, and apologies if I had any kind of adding error here, because I literally just threw this in the calculator on my phone. But I just looked at Garrett Wilson's first 7 weeks of his career. He had 1.29 yards per out run through his first 7 games. I think the like we want to have a complete data point on Travis Hunter from his rookie season, and we just don't, and like, to take the fact that he played right away while also playing defense is just, it's really impressive. It's very unusual that a wide receiver, even with a ton of draft capital, comes in and is just like playing that over the course of his first 7 games, they actually had very strong route participation, like the type of route participation that for the full season, you'd be like, sick. This was good. Mm-hmm. He didn't even need to ramp up, Now, it's not like the strongest. You'd prefer a guy to be, closer to 90. But like Brian Thomas was at 84%, Travis Hunter was at 76%, and he was playing mostly out of the slot.
76 is totally fine.
Totally fine. Yeah. He was in a totally fine offensive role in his first 7 games. And like, yeah, I know he wasn't super efficient, but he did look much better in his final game. It's not like he didn't flash at all. He also had some like really, really impressive, individual plays. And so I'm still pretty excited about what the ceiling looks like on this guy. And then you go, all right, how could he get to full-time routes? Well, I don't know. Jacoby Myers, he's 29. He turns 30 in November. He's coming off 1.52 yards per route run. That he couldn't eat into that. That couldn't be someone he displaces over the course of the season. I think it could. Parker Washington is a former 6th round pick. He's struggled to really do anything before this. He ran almost 400 routes 2 years ago, 383 routes. He had 1.02 yards per route run. I recognize that he had 2.19 last year and looked great and was producing down the stretch and kind of was like their most productive and best wide receiver.
Yes, he
but
was.
Some of that's, I'm like, he's doing the role that he's playing is the one they designed for Travis Hunter in this offense. So like, I'm glad he was great in it. And it certainly makes Hunter's role a little bit, more murky moving forward, because I doubt they just swap in Hunter purely for Washington. But there's so many times we've seen a kind of 6th round guy pop up for one efficient season and go away again. Like, this happens a lot. Davis mentioned Russell Gage the other day. Like these types of guys who kind of come around and it's like, okay.
I don't think that's very fair, but I understand that. I understand.
Gage hit 1.96 yards per route run in his final season with the Falcons, and I believe was drafted at a very similar ADP to where Parker Washington is going now when he was
Parker
on the
Washington
Bucs.
was 23 years old when he just did this.
I mean, how old would a Gage have been? 25?
Let's find out.
He had a 1.96 yards per route run season in 2021.
Let's see.
It was on his rookie deal. It was the final year of his rookie deal as
25.
opposed to the third year. Yeah, it's not a huge difference to me. And it wasn't a big difference to the market because he had an ADP in the single-digit rounds, I believe, which we all mocked and didn't do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm not saying we liked it. We thought it was ridiculous, but and I believe in Washington more than I'm not saying he is Gage, but like
for sure,
there's a long history of Parker Washington's becoming kind of Russell Gage's, and so that's another out and not an injury related one. Like Washington had his moment in the sun. He's back to kind of being a reserve. He was very inefficient before last year, and actually, he turns out he's not that good. And then you do have Brian Thomas, who was at 1.45 yards per route run last year. So you've got him really struggling last season as well. We're expecting him to bounce back. Perhaps he doesn't. And so, that's another non-injury related out for Travis Hunter. The out I care most about is that I think he might be really good. And it kind of just makes, and we flip this in our minds. And now it's not, how is Travis Hunter going to get on the field? It's how are these guys going to get on the field? Because there's 3 of them and Travis Hunter's playing.
Yep.
Right. So that's the thing I'm betting on the most.
I think that's it. I really do. As still more of a bear side of it. I think the real case is just all of these concerns don't matter. He's a baller. So whatever. It works. It works its way out because like the defense stuff, like he played 162 defensive snaps last year. Like in that game against the Rams when he had a good game, like he played 14 defensive snaps. This was not a full-time defensive player. This was not a guy playing full-time on both sides of the football. So the whole, he's going to play more corner. If we're using like all of the evidence, if he's going to play more corner, the evidence wasn't that he's playing full-time on both sides of the football last year, right? It was a solid, a full-time slot receiver, right? Which is getting 70+% is very nice for the role that he was in. But he had a couple games, week 2 and week 3, he played 43 defensive snaps, but it was like 6, 9, 25, 22, 14 over his 7 defensive snaps. The team also they basically let corners walk and said, okay, we're going to replace them with Travis Hunter. So my main concern is really not even a lot of it is they need him, and their actions showed us that they want him on the defensive side. Not that he won't play offense, but they certainly need him less. And so he's going to be a priority corner for them. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. They've even said as much. How much he plays on offense, I think, is going to be highly variant. And so what I think needs to happen for him to become a smash is what you said at the end. He's too good to keep off the field on offense.
It's Rorschach. from Watchmen.
Yes.
I'm not stuck in here with you. You're stuck in here with me.
100%. Yes.
That's what he does to the Jaguars wide receiver room.
Yes. And I love Parker Washington. So I'm coming at this. I'm the worst person to talk to about this. First of all, I played defensive back, and I played defensive back in college, and I still can't fucking figure out how this dude played both sides of the football and ran a million routes in college, because I was dead. Like, we played at 1 p.m. every Saturday, and it's been a long time, and I played Division III, NAIA and Division III football, right? But like you play for 3.5 hours, and first of all, we played an offense, a spread fucking air raid offense like they played at Colorado, where you throw the ball like 55 times. And this was pre-rolling clock. This was every incomplete pass was a fucking... So we would play 4-hour games in the fucking 100-degree temps, whatever. So I would be so gassed. I mean, I played special teams and stuff, but like I would be so gassed that like you go out and party on Saturdays, and I'm like, I can't make it. Like I'm a college kid with like endless energy, and I could make it, all night partying and stuff on Saturdays, because it was just like, I mean, I could barely move after the game. This fucker did that ×2 every Saturday in the Big 12. And I'm like, and now he's going to do it in the NFL. Like, it doesn't make any logical sense. And then I didn't like him as a wide receiver prospect quite as much. And I didn't like what I saw as a rookie maybe quite as much as some other people have. And then like, I like Parker Washington, I think the Brian Thomas thing was difficult for me to reconcile, because I'm sure you recall a couple of years ago, I was like just a little bit more cautious on BTJ as a prospect coming in than the market was. And then speaking of egg on face, like awesome. I got dunked all over. And then in year 2, I'm like, well, fuck, was I right? Like, what is this? Was I right? Was I wrong? So it's a weird whole situation that I admit I think it's difficult for everyone, but it's particularly difficult for me. But I think I've slowly started to come around to like, again, I don't want to be hypocritical, because I really do believe like this whole game is chaos and like contingent value and that kind of stuff. And he has that in spades. And
he has that talent in spades. He has 3 outs to where he's got really strong playing time. Ryan Flournoy's got 2 outs, and he goes, only 40 picks later.
Let's like not
expensive Flournoy, even is that. It's
okay. Fantasy points. Side bet Flournoy fantasy points versus Travis Hunter. Total points.
Yeah, sure, whatever you want.
Yeah, there we go. We'll figure out a bet. We don't got to do it this week. We'll figure out a bet. That's a fun one. That's a fun one. Jesus Christ. If my mom, if you're listening, my life has gone so sideways that I'm betting on Travis Hunter. I'm betting on a corner versus an undrafted rookie free agent or whatever.
And the corner, I think the corner is a pretty strong favorite.
Why did you spend that money on that college education for this to be where I'm at almost I turned 30.
Wide receiver just outscored by a cornerback.
I turned 38 in a couple of days, and I'm betting against corners to outscore Dallas Cowboys wide receivers. What a life I'm living. All right, we got to get through wild card. It's kind of funny that Travis Hunter isn't the wild card, but
well, I got a wild card for you.
Flex works. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, Flex is good because he literally plays both sides of the ball, so he's the most flexible player there is. Wild card, I'm going to go with Jonathan Brooks.
Love that.
I mean, because this guy is a true wild card in terms of what he's going to give us coming off of the ACL re-tear. But man, the news coming out of mini camp or whatever is looking good. He's cutting. He's back. They seem really happy. They seem like they kind of made a leap of faith with him and are feeling like they're kind of breathing a sigh of relief. That's me reading into, watching a little bit of the YouTube stuff where they're like, yeah, he looks really good. Because look, I mean, they could have easily added, like it would have been very inexpensive for them to add some kind of contingency plan here, like a Rachaad White cost a couple mil. They could, they still they could have been at least like working out Najee Harris or something. We haven't heard about that. Like they seem like they're pretty set.
Not a peep. There hasn't been a peep about them with a free agent guy.
No. And Trevor Etienne did nothing last year and was not a very good prospect to begin with. Yeah. So Yeah, not a surprise he didn't do anything. And then Chuba Hubbard was not the starter for a lot of last year with Rico Dowdle, kind of he peaked and then kind of ceded some work back to Hubbard. Hubbard kind of was the starter, led the way in the playoffs, or in the playoff game. But, it is odd that they would head into a full season with like just Chuba, or just Chuba and Trevor Etienne. So it does seem like very likely that Brooks is actually a part of their plan in a way that, Marshawn Lloyd is never going to be part of plans now. Like he's hit a point where they're,
Yep.
you get hurt this much, the NFL team's going to kind of write off what you're ever going to give them.
Hmm.
I was worried we might be there with Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we are. I think the Panthers are planning for Brooks to have a meaningful role this year and probably like the whole year. Like not the type of thing he has to earn and kind of fight and scrap for, but like, no, we took this guy in the second round a couple years ago. He's finally healthy. We're ready to see what he can bring. I mean, if that's actually true and he is the guy he was before the 2 ACL tear, the ACL and then re-tear, like, I mean, he kind of changes things. He sort of changes like what we think about the running back landscape to a degree. He's only one player. He can only do so much. But I mean, we're like, oh, there's no running backs left once you hit, you got to take all your running backs in like the single digit rounds. There's really no upside. Like he's upside. He's big upside. He's, he's a classic zero running back. We just drafted a starter, and we didn't have to spend 11th round pick and I get a starter. Like that's pretty sweet, right? So
yep.
I don't know if he's that guy yet. And I think the funny thing is if he is that guy, then it just changes and he just costs way more. But right now, before we know for sure, he is becoming someone I'm starting to take a lot of. And I was a little bit more cautious. Even like a week ago, I was like, oh, he's a good pick probably, but you gotta like squint a little and maybe we're better off just holding off till we know more. And now I've kind of hit, there's an inflection point here where it's like, look, we're never going to know until we know with Jonathan Brooks, but we're getting
and once
enough signal. Yeah.
Once this price is gone.
I mean, if you want to wait till obviously you'll never really know until the season, but let's say the most, it would be like 2 or 3 weeks into training camp. And at that point, like he could be a 6th round pick or something. If he's just the starter, like, like that kind of, you need to know to that level, like, okay, but you're never getting this price.
I mean, he goes at what I'm looking at DraftKings again. He goes
125 on Underdog,
131 on DraftKings. And that is,
man,
and it's steadily rising because people are getting the same optimism you are. And I don't, unless he's like, which there's zero indications of it, unless he's like not ready for camp. I mean, he's already out there. Like I can't really see what stops the freight train, unless he just looks like shit, I guess. He looks bad.
And we talked earlier about, with your Skattebo pick, the types of teams that might not be available later. I think teams that, if you do want to go, and frankly, I don't think it has to be like Jonathan Brooks is part of a zero running back thing if you don't want, or a hero running back, or, you go 2 running backs and then you wait a while and grab him as RB3. Like, sure, yes to all the above, but you could also be looking at teams that have like the what I said before, Gibbs, Love, Skattebo, Jonathan Brooks, done. That's a sick team that you could only build now, probably, So that's the kind of stuff where, he's not just someone that he's not like changing the way I approach early running back necessarily. He fits so many different types of builds at this price. And I do think this price, I mean, either he's like a horrendous pick and I'm torching some teams right now, which I admit is a realistic possibility. The floor is low. I mean, the floor is very low, but we've talked endlessly about lack of upside at running back past the single digit rounds this year, past, pick 100, and he's at like 125, 131, depending on the site. And you get an upside of like the most, like a team that wants to run the ball and you have their clear starting running back, and he is the starting running back because he's the most talented guy on the roster with a pedigree of being a 2nd round pick. Like, that's pretty good, and we kind of don't have many other guys that I'm like, he's young, of course the injury stuff as well, but it's like, you're like, oh, Rashad White, we all know kind of sucks, but he does catch passes and he's big enough to be used to the goal line, and there's not a lot of the competition, so maybe he just like kind of like by his fingernails like holds on to a good role all year. Like Aaron Jones is like eventually going to be like a very expensive version of the Alvin Kamara bet, but maybe not yet. Maybe this year it'll work.
I thought you were going to say is eventually going to be in a wheelchair, because that was where my that does seem like that's sooner rather than later for this guy.
Yeah. So I'm just, there's so many, there's clicks in the range that I think are fine, but they're all like so gross from an upside perspective. And man, he's got real upside.
I did that zero running back team I mentioned earlier before the show, and got sniped on Brooks as my RB2.
It's a bummer if you get sniped on Brooks.
So triggered.
There's no arbitrage Brooks.
No, there are no others. And you can't manufacture that upside. I totally agree.
Which is another reason he's going to rise, because it's not like if you're a Brooks person and that's like, yeah, you can take Brooks, but you got to take him 5 picks earlier than yesterday. We're just all saying yes for like 8 days in a row.
We've been saying there's some Brooks, big Brooks stands in my Discord that have been saying, like, from like whatever in the big board, you opened in like the 1-6, you opened with no ADP, but you know what I mean? Like it was just like steadily, and it was like, yep, 160, yep, 155, yep, 145, yep, and now it's 125. It's like, yep, and it's if you like him, it's like the price is like almost irrelevant. It's obviously not irrelevant, but it's like whatever the price is.
It hasn't hit the point yet where
no.
It did. I think it kind of with Brooks, and sometimes there's these guys, and I never kind of get on the train. It's hard to move a boarding train or whatever the NFL expression is of why they can't play a guy. But I think this one I've boarded, but it did take me. I had a couple false starts on boarding the train because I'm like, wait, are we sure he's like not still hurt? He said he's almost 100%. That seems kind of bad.
It was really slowly moving, and you were like walking after it. You needed to jump, but you were like, it's in front of you. Like, should I go jump onto that train or not? And you're like, you're staying within reach or whatever, but then you decided to eventually jump on. All right, my wild card is not a single player, but I think the thing that is like the most chaotic, more than running back even, that is most chaotic about this year for fantasy football, best ball specifically, because these guys are not as relevant for redraft, is the quarterback situation is crazy. We talked a lot, when we talked about Mahomes and Herbert, we talked a ton on the first episode about the quarterback window and the quarterback environment this year. And like, it's sort of fitting that both of the quarterbacks we mentioned are these like really good real life quarterbacks that have had ups and downs for various different reasons or injuries or whatever, that we're getting in that nice window, right? 80 to 90 or whatever. Because when you get to the late quarterbacks, which is my wild card for this year, is like, do these guys have jobs? Is Aaron Rodgers going to play football this year? Is Jacoby Brissett the starter? Is Carson Beck starting later in the season? Like, the Jets offense looks fun, but are they going to be so bad that they go to a rookie? Is Geno good enough to, hold up for Brees and Garrett Wilson and Omar and Sadiq and right? And like Fernando Mendoza, how many games is he going to start? Is he good? He's never played under center before. They got him playing under center now. There's like they all obviously have serious question marks for a variety of different reasons. But like, if guys pop from back here, it feels like the power of, what the Jets are just scoring a bunch of points, right? Geno's fucking playing point guard to all these talented weapons. The Cardinals win some games, and Jacoby Brissett is getting the football to all these. Same thing. Jeremiah Love, Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison, Michael. Like, there's talent on this offense, right? Yeah. Fernando Mendoza with like, what if he just steps in day one and you're like, oh fuck yeah, he was the first overall pick in a Clint Kubiak offense, throwing to Bowers and handing off to Genty, and like, he's just awesome right out of the gates. It's like they all have their concerns. And I don't love dipping my toes in those waters, just like most people don't. That's why they go where they go. And they definitely go higher than that archetype has gone. And maybe not Mendoza, but has gone in the past, right? Like the Genos of the world would be at the end of drafts. I mean, Aaron Rodgers genuinely might retire and gets drafted in like every single draft. Like that's crazy. And he's not a very good fantasy asset. But right, the Browns guys, Watson or Shador, fucking whatever. There's options back there that can like truly unlock shit, right? The running back concerns we have, you're like, we can't get any good running backs after Jonathan Brooks or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
We're talking about Skattebo and Tuten and stuff. Like, how do you get Bowers? How do you get Lemon? How do you get whatever? It's like, I don't know, man. What if Mendoza's just the fucking man out of the gate? What if this Jets talent like Geno hangs in there and he's scoring some fantasy points like he did with the Seahawks? You know what I mean? What if Jacoby Brissett is scoring fantasy points like he did? If he showed up to DFS down the stretch last year, you got so fucking fed up with the Jacoby Brissett chalk every goddamn week. It always got there. You know, he's always scoring 20-something points.
Yeah, and it didn't get there till the fourth quarter. So you're like, these.
You felt like a genius. Like even maybe you played McBride, but you're like, at least Brissett didn't get there. And then in the fourth quarter, he goes from 8 to fucking 24. You know, but like that could happen for the season. And so I don't know. Like I don't have a guy I'm latching onto. I prefer probably Mendoza because I'm just rookie biased or whatever. But like if the late quarterbacks could really make a bigger dent on this season than maybe they have historically because of the lack of supply at the quarterback position and how awkward and uncomfortable the late quarterbacks feel this year relative to other seasons.
Yeah, I guess the quarterbacks, like when late is
I'm talking
sort of
the Geno, Mendoza, Brissett. So like what's that? Like one I have DraftKings up. Brissett goes like in the 150s, which is fucking insane. But I'm just looking.
Yeah.
So like I'm counting Cam Ward, Bryce Young, etc. in the not late quarterbacks because they're like, I think they're probably that's the group year.
I like. I think the guy, if I was gonna pick the quarterbacks who like are actually really undervalued, I think it would be to me the group just ahead of that: Stroud, Darnold, Daniel Jones. Stroud's the one I take a ton of because I mean, he's shown a ceiling in the past. It's been a while. He does also have Nico Collins and, some other secondary weapons. The offensive line has been tough. But, hopefully that's sort of we've seen the worst of it. And then they added Dave Montgomery and it sort of like gets them to a point where they're competent again. Like they were like a run heavy based team with Woody Marks and the end of career Nick Chubb at running back. So it's just like it still boggles my mind that they like just didn't have a plan for Joe Mixon, clearly not going to be able to play for them. They're like, it'll be fine. We just won't have a running back and build the team around the run. What could go wrong? But yeah, I mean, I think Stroud's, I think, pretty underpriced relative to some of these other guys. And then Darnold and Jones both have, especially Jones, like Jones, who goes at 147, has some pretty big upside at the end of the season. So he's not someone I'm smashing, but I'm just feel better about those guys from a job security standpoint. And you're not having to pay a ton for them.
Bryce and Cam Ward go like similar, it's kind of,
they're similar too. Yeah, they're right there as well.
But
yeah,
that's why I said again, we can draw the line where we I agree with you with what you're saying. And I draft like I like the Panthers a lot. I draft I draft a ton of the Panthers, so I end up with more Bryce. I draft a bunch of Bowers and Genty, so I might end up with Mendoza or whatever. But I've done some Titan stuff, right? But those guys, like you said, I think have a lot more job security, like significantly more job security, and like all year jobs. Like I'm not worried. I mean, other than Daniel Jones because of the injury at the start of the season, but like I'm not worried about those guys like losing their jobs or any of that kind of stuff. But again, so all the quarterbacks by the time you get to, like you said, Stroud or whatever, Cam Ward, that with that level of certainty are fucking gone by pick 150, are all gone. We used to get guys, maybe not like full blown job security, but like far better picks than Geno fucking Smith on the Jets, as an option at the end. So you do have to be more cognizant of, like you said, you need to know like who's your backstop if you're not willing to take the Genos and Jacobys of the world. Like you like Stroud, right? I like Bryce, whatever, whoever your backstop is, you really need to know that this year. But that could change, right? If these late quarterbacks do something that neither of us are expecting and like really no one is expecting.
Yeah. And yeah, those guys will pop, especially if you haven't taken care of running back or a quarterback in like a big way. Like if you don't, I've probably spent enough on quarterback when I get to those guys that I don't take a lot of them. But
Mm-hmm.
I think three quarterback, kind of lessons from the Sims, three quarterback is more powerful than we thought. And having, guys that help, like in the pre-draft period, I do actually have a decent amount of like Geno Smith and Jacoby Brissett and stuff because I have a lot of Mahomes and
Mm-hmm.
just like I'm pretty sure if we like went back in a time machine and had like the sidekick Sims for the Sam Howell year that he would have simmed pretty well. Like that's my I think like because we had that big debate and I was like he's going to get benched and he was benched. But he scored a lot of points before he was benched. And he was free. So I think like
we were like both right. That was one of the weird. So Flanoy and Hunter are going to score the exact same amount of fantasy points. That's what we've learned from these debates. So Stribling, Flanoy, and Hunter are all going to score the exact same amount of fantasy points. But we were both like, it was like, you're like, my concerns, like, and they were real concerns. And I had those same concerns, but I was like, I don't care. I'm willing to eat that risk because he's going to score a bunch of fantasy points. And it was like, you're right. He did get benched, but I was right. He did score a bunch of fantasy points. So like, but how do you value that? You know what I mean? Like, how do you value Jacoby Brissett in that? Like, it's the same thing.
And the tough part for me with compared to the Howell from that year is like Howell was with Bieniemy and we were like, he's going to throw a ton. And I don't feel that way about Brissett with the coaching changeover. I think that the volume might go away from him. Also, I think he could get benched quite a bit earlier, than Howell ultimately did. I was only at the end of the year. And I have similar concerns about the Jets and their willingness to be, at all pass heavy. So that's part of it too, is that I don't think they'll be as fantasy friendly. But if you can tell yourself that story, if you really believe that, those guys are going to outperform when they play, then I do get some of the appeal. I tend to be, like I was saying, I just think there's enough upside and safety in the quarterback group that goes ahead of those guys. Even with a Cam Ward, who I'm not a huge fan of, like I think, I mean, he's going to start, unless he's horrendous, he's going to start all year, and he does have upside. So that's kind of the reason I'm not waiting as much. But it's also kind of an 18 round versus 20 round thing, I think, to a degree. I think with those extra couple rounds to spend, then those guys are more appealing. And I guess I should say Rodgers is a cleaner bet if you're like really convinced he is going to sign with the Steelers, which
he's
seems
not getting
both
benched.
very likely, and
they would have to lose.
Scares me he won't.
Games. Yeah,
yeah, he's not getting benched. It's more like it's just clean. It's like he either plays for the Steelers and plays, or he doesn't play.
But clean is the right term, because it's clean good. It's also very clean bad. Like that motherfucker smoking ayahuasca in week 1 while you're drowning in your 20%.
And he'll move up. He'll move up to that same kind of like Daniel Jones-esque range, at least maybe not quite as high, but he'll flip Brissett and Smith when and if he signs. So I gotta get going though for.
We're gonna run. I just wanted to Jacoby Brissett last year. I just want to run this down because it is kind of crazy. From when he scored about the same points per game as Lamar, Jaden Daniels, Baker Mayfield, whatever. 22, 20, 25, 19, 24, 19, 20, 20, 21, 12, 16, 16. But it was like, so you're getting like real fantasy production from that guy. That was last year. It's different scenario, all that kind of stuff. But that's what's potentially in the cards for someone like that. I know you got to run to go record another pod. Anything before we jump?
Check out That's Fair with Sam Sherman, which will be on YouTube on the Leg Up channel by the time this is posted. And we'll be back Monday on the Leg Up channel with Greg Branos for our legendary coach speak, talking through some of the key news and notes around the league and then drafting a team. I do a mailbag show on the Leg Up channel on Tuesdays called Top Guy Tuesday, where I just take the top guy in the sidekick. So you can kind of see like what those teams look like, and then answer questions from the Leg Up chat and from the YouTube chat and from the Leg Up Discord. I did have someone say, "So you're just a slave to The Sims now, huh?" I was like, "It's called Top Guy Tuesday, my friend." I'm going to be taking the Top Guy.
I
But yeah,
do
it's kind of fun to, have room to have extra time to then talk to the chat.
100%. I do a freestyle Friday. So just to recap what you do, Tuesdays through Friday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every single day at 11 a.m. Eastern. So right. So Pat's on the West Coast, so you can hang out with him in the afternoons. You can come hang out with me and draft some teams Tuesday through Friday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern, live every single morning doing several drafts. And on Fridays, which we're recording this on Thursdays, on Fridays, I do a freestyle Friday where it's kind of the same thing, except the chat gives me some ideas. Right. So I pull some, like I'm freestyling, but you guys give me the subject matter for the draft, and I pull that together. So join Pat in the afternoons, join me in the mornings, and of course, like this video, whether you're watching it on Legendary Upside channel or the Spike Week channel, and we will see you guys next week. Peace.